Reading is part of our daily life. We read all the time. We read not only to survive, but also for enjoyment. Imagine your perfect reading spot. Are you sitting or standing while you read? Are you cuddled under a blanket by the fireplace with a hot cup of tea? Or are you lounging on a beach with the sun beating down and a warm breeze blowing through your hair? No matter where your ideal spot to read is, I'd wager a guess that you imagine yourself reading silently. Reading has taken different shapes throughout history. We recognize now that reading can happen in 3 different ways. Reading can be oral, when we hear ourselves read, oral, when we listen to others read, or silent, when we read with our eyes. The earliest records of reading tell us that reading was an act, an event that was performed for a community and not often a private endeavor. In his book, Space Between Words, Paul Salinger explains some of the fundamental differences between modern and ancient reading. Modern reading is a silent, solitary, and rapid activity. Ancient reading was generally oral, either aloud and in groups, or individual in a muffled voice. Alberto Manuel explains that in ancient societies, normal reading was performed out loud. Even though instances of silent reading can be traced to earlier dates, not until the 10th century does this manner of reading become usual in the West. So that leaves us with a question. How did we get from there to here? How did reading evolve throughout history? Salinger explains that in the West, the ability to read silently and rapidly is a result of the historical evolution of word separation. That beginning in the 7th century changed the format of the written page, which had to be read orally and slowly in order to be comprehended. Books or text were initially written in scriptura continua, a continuous line of words strung together without spaces or breaks. This limited access to text and even to reading itself. There were a few select individuals who could read, and this group was often restricted to court and clergy. Manuel further explains that whether it was the first Sumerian tablets or the primordial languages in the Bible, the act of reading was meant to be done aloud. There was little differentiation between reading and speaking. They were one and the same. Prior to the 10th century, reading was almost exclusively oral and never silent. Around this time, word spacing began to be put into practice as an aid to reading aloud, but it soon gave rise to 2 new practices: silent copying and silent reading. This is when reading was spun on its head and changed forever. While it seems like a simple development, word spacing changed the face and function of reading. It made reading easier and more accessible. It made books more visual. It made reading more private. Books covered a vast range of topics. And the act of reading was less intensive. These changes made reading more accessible for more people in the social hierarchy, and as Sanger writes, as a consequence, even readers of modest intellectual capacity could read more swiftly, and they could understand an increasing number of inherently more difficult texts.